The world is at war, and every day holds the promise of victory or the possibility of defeat. See the pivotal events that changed our lives forever. The crucial turning points of World War II. Now Reader's Digest takes you to the front lines, where you'll experience the epic drama as it unfolds in 3 arenas and 15 battles. With this 3-hour video, you'll gain new insight into both sides' strategies and understand how split-second luck and do-or-die heroism altered the course of history. Storm the beaches at Normandy. Steer your convoy toward Midway Island. Roar into treacherous enemy skies. And witness the use of the world's first atomic bomb. Experience the most explosive events of the century in a whole new light. The crucial turning points of World War II, available only from Reader's Digest. Discover blow by blow how the war was won. Coming from Reader's Digest in April '97. Watch your mail for this exciting video offer.
Most trains are designed to get you someplace else. The faster, the better. But there's one whose express purpose is to savor the ride itself. If champagne and caviar had wheels, they'd be the Orient Express. It is perhaps the most celebrated train on Earth. For those who board it are bound for another time. Its passengers are setting off on 2 trains at once. One of the present, one of the past. This is where it all began. Before the Eiffel Tower, the Express was born. And once a week, it departs Paris. It's 9:40, 0 hour. 190 passengers are about to descend on Gare de l'Est. 190 hungry passengers. Christian Bodiguel is one of Paris's premier chefs. Now, his talents belong to the train. This trip is one of the world's last refuges for the kind of treatment once reserved for sultans and princes. For those with the privilege to partake, nothing is spared. And no one on earth is better equipped to indulge them than cabin steward Geoffrey Monk. The pampering that awaits Geoffrey's passengers harkens to a time of incomparable service. It's as if he were summoned from another age. These cars are haunted by a world of memories, of Balkan espionage, brazen intrigue, and royal romance. By the ghosts of Europe's once reigning elite. In 1883, when the Express was launched, train travel was an exploit for the daring. Tourism was a new curiosity, sweeping the continent. And all Europe became an invitation for adventure. The train was famed for departing on schedule, for arriving on schedule. But on our journey, our time zones will be shifting by a century or so. From Paris, the old Orient Express set out. The Europe it crossed was a hotbed of conflict, and its destination, Constantinople, was the gateway to the East. The train revolutionized travel, thanks to one man. For Georges Nagelmacher's, all it took was some ingenuity and a plush fleet of luxury wagons. That, and a little help from some royalty. King Leopold II of Belgium had the vision to back the venture. But then he had his reasons. It's said that on board he enjoyed the occasional tryst with his mistress. In just 82 hours, at a dazzling speed, all of 40 miles per hour, the Express delivered its passengers to the far reaches of civilization. Suddenly, the rigid borders of Europe were altogether traversable. And in a continent once closed and difficult to cross, a corridor was now open. This was the great lure of the Express. On board, you never knew who you might run into. For popes and potentates, lovers, stars and spies, this was the only way to go. Here, deception ruled, stealth reigned, and lives were bartered for lies. As everyone knows, murder and the Orient Express are old bedfellows. Today, the train is reborn as the Venice Simplon Orient Express, and its destination is Italy. But these are still the same cars that ushered it through its heyday. Jeffrey walks in the footsteps of countless attendants past, some who catered to the most unorthodox of clientele.
This is 3544 carriage, and it was used as a brothel during the war in Limoges for the German officers between 1942 and 45. So then the Dutch Royal train, it was used shortly after. So from a brothel to a Royal train, it's quite a difference.
There's only been one documented case of murder on the Express. One night in 1950, an American spy named Eugene Karp was seduced by a beautiful Hungarian agent. The next day, he was found dead. His cabin steward had been drugged, an occupational hazard Jeffrey has avoided so far. There were 4 of them, the story goes, all strangers, or so they claimed. Beyond that, we know little. To the end, they all swore they hadn't so much as laid a hand on one another, even when one made a rather unconventional stop. 4 people entered the tunnel. 3 came out. When you take the express, you never know where you're going to get off. At every border, the train's engine is replaced by one belonging to the next country. Europe has 3 different electrical systems powering its railways, a throwback to the time when national security depended on hard and fast borders. Today, each crossing of the continent is still something of a diplomatic milestone. Imagine what it took back then. Legend has it that King Boris of Bulgaria made his border a battleground of wills. Boris was supposedly an ardent train enthusiast and not one to be content as a mere passenger. After a few mishaps, the story goes, train officials tried to bar him from the controls. But Boris, after all, was a king, and power is the privilege of royalty. Once, in 1934, the train was running behind schedule. A fireman overstoked the boiler to make up for lost time. A blowback erupted, and the man was set ablaze. It's said that Boris bravely put out the flames and guided the train to safety. But according to a more fanciful account, the poor man leapt to his death as Boris blithely sped on. The truth is known only to the train. Speed and luxury don't readily mix. A point to be reckoned with, 3 meals a day. Christian Bodiguel is the mastermind behind this movable feast.
Ici, nous avons un four à vapeur où on cuit certains légumes.
Welcome to the world's smallest gourmet kitchen. At 50 miles an hour, for 21 hours straight, Christian prepares 540 meals, and each is 4 stars. Crowded he may be, but the Express never cramps his style.
Other chefs have mentors. For me, I get my inspiration from my window. Seeing the fields go by, seeing where the artichokes are grown. This is my inspiration. How many restaurants in Paris have a window in their kitchen?
Catering to the most discerning palates of Europe has never been for the faint of heart. Years ago, one Austrian countess insisted her miniature poodles be treated to a special diet of Wiener Schnitzel. Here, high society has found refuge from the mundane. Every luminary of the century graced these corridors. From Einstein to Houdini, from Caruso to Queen Victoria, Mahler to Marlene to Mata Hari. Here, the Duke of Windsor and Mrs. Simpson eloped. Here, on an express car, Hitler humiliated France with the Armistice Treaty, clinching its surrender. But not everyone came to see and be seen. Some rode the rail to steal away. During the First World War, along the route the Express followed, an Allied agent named Michel collected intelligence about Turkey's garrisons. He encoded it in musical notes. When the authorities seized his manuscripts, they insisted on having them tested at the keyboard. The consensus? A masterpiece of modern music. Michel got away, tin ear intact. Robert Baden-Powell, celebrated founder of the Boy Scouts, began his career as a spy. Aboard the Express, he developed a foolproof method for smuggling his secrets. Encoded in the butterflies he sketched were plans for Balkan naval installations, critical to the Allied effort in the Great War. The ghosts who ride the Orient Express need no tickets. After all, they only come aboard at night.
Sometimes I felt things, and just talking to other colleagues of mine, they've seen flashing lights and things moving, and I'm sure there must be ghosts on there, and especially at night time, well, early hours of the morning between 1 and 2, and it's pretty quiet. You may see the last person come back from the bar, but when it's very quiet and you're out in the middle of the vestibules, checking the fires and making sure everything's okay, you can feel a bit of a shiver come over your back sometimes.
January 7th, 1886. The honeymoon of Doña Maria and her insane husband had come to an end, all too abruptly. From one fate, she fled to another. She was a Spanish countess, he a ruthless arms dealer. At precisely 2:32 in the morning, in compartment 7, she found refuge in the arms of Basil Zaharoff. And so began a scandalous romance that would last more than 40 years and bear 3 children. To compartment 7, the couple would steal away again and again. After his beloved Maria died, Zaharoff lived on for 10 long years. When he died, his servant boarded compartment 7, bearing a photo of the Countess. And at exactly 2:32 a.m., on the same stretch of track where they met, he fulfilled his master's last wish. Out of another age and into our own, the Orient Express is at last arriving in Venice. What better destination for a train steeped in history? The world has a short memory. But in some forgotten corners, the past still lingers. On the Orient Express, it's alive and well. On another shore of Italy, another voyage begins. One measured not in miles, but in centuries. Along the famed Amalfi Coast, grand villas blessed by sunshine and sea celebrate La Dolce Vita, the sweet life. But it hasn't always been that way. These sunny slopes were once darkened by death. Archaeologist Antonio Varone understands the danger better than most. His daily commute to his dig site is a journey back to a time when this land was overtaken by smoke and fire.
In
the morning, the first thing I see is Mount Vesuvius. It brings death and it's dangerous, sure. But it's a way of life here. It's a danger that we're used to.
Varone lives under the very threat that destroyed the site he's studying. For he dwells beneath a monster. Towering 4,000 feet above the Bay of Naples, the volcano looms. In its embrace is a thriving population of more than 3 million people. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the people who lived here stood witness to a world gone mad. Vesuvius had awakened. The eruption hurled a column of smoke and ash more than 9 miles into the sky. Its fearsome shower of gas and debris, a layer of seething ash 20 feet deep, was plummeting at speeds of up to 70 miles an hour. In its path, 20,000 people stood helpless. Surrendered to oblivion was the city of Pompeii. But for a few legends, Pompeii was forgotten. For centuries, the secrets of a lost city lay hidden from the light of day. Then, one chance discovery was met with another, and gradually the shroud lifted. At last, a grim picture took shape. For all its fury, Vesuvius graced the world with a gift beyond measure. Preserved in its seal of pumice and ash is a day in the life of an ordinary Roman city. These ruins are forever frozen in the instant they were buried alive. A 1,000 acres have been excavated. Revealed is a kind of miniature Rome, an intact urban landscape. The building blocks of Western government, of religion, and the arts. In the world's oldest known amphitheater, crowds roared for more as the blood of wild beasts and gladiators was spilled on the sands. But a journey through these empty streets, a stroll along these cold stones, can only tell so much. Across the city, the questions linger. Who were the people who dwelled here? How did they live? How did they die? To really know their secrets, venture behind the scenes where the magic of discovery awaits. Where the walls are still covered with ash, and life is revealed to those who seek it.
Benvenuti sul mio scavo.
Welcome to my dig site. Come along.
A third of Pompeii remains unexcavated. Far from the public eye, the discoveries continue. Verone is overseeing an ambitious restoration effort. His reward, a once glorious villa. After more than 10 years at this site, it is slowly being unearthed. One stone at a time.
Buongiorno. Ciao Francesca, ciao. Novità stamattina?
Today, Verone's crew will remove a full foot of the earth that fills this chamber. The walls here would have been just below the ceiling. Inch by inch, each day brings new clues. Each clue, new purpose to the dig. For some, the reasons are altogether personal. Vincenzo Matrone knows the power of Vesuvius all too well.
Vede questa lapille? In questo momento mi ricorda qualcosa del passato, quando ero ragazzo.
You see this ash? It reminds me of when I was a boy during the eruption of 1944. My relatives were coming to the house and they were scared, saying Vesuvio, Vesuvio, and they ran with wooden planks on their head.
Only half a century ago, Vesuvius once again stirred from its slumber. The disaster Matrone survived was captured on film by combat photographers. To a world at war, here was a reminder of what fury the earth could unleash. In torrents, lava consumed everything in its path. The eruption was devastating, but it was nothing compared to the blast that buried Pompeii.
Ah, è bellissimo. Sono questi colori molto
Only hours later, a discovery.
Il capo coronato di Pampi.
The god of wine.
Evidentemente si beveva molto vino.
For Verone's team, here is a treasure. This room once resounded with the rites of Bacchus, a ritual orgy of song and drink.
What a find! Look how vibrant the red is. It's a wonderful example of the paintings that would have filled this room.
This was a house of the wealthy, lovers of the good life. A well-stocked wine cellar, dining halls, kitchens, even a bakery and a sprawling garden, all attest to a passion for convenience and opulence. The Castigliamati, Verone dubbed his site, after a fresco found within, the house of the chaste lovers. In Pompeii, La Dolce Vita was as sweet as it gets.
Vede queste conchiglie? Non sono certo opere d'arte.
Do you see these shells? These are snail shells. Certainly not pieces of art, but important to us because they testify to the eating habits that were in vogue. Seafood was abundant. For instance, on a hot summer afternoon, someone might have eaten these in the garden here, eaten them and simply thrown the shells away, like we still do today.
Un po' come facciamo anche noi oggi.
In many ways, little has changed since the age of Pompeii. To really know life as it once was, look among the living, amid the spirited people of Campania. These halls once bustled with life. 4 mills and an oven recall the time when the ancient hearths burned as brightly as those of today. Pompeii's ruins are as haunting as they are familiar. Then, as now, this region was the hub of commerce for all Campania. To imagine how it was for the ancients, we need only walk the streets of Naples. For 300 years, come every Saturday, Pompeii's weekly market transformed the city into a vibrant center. From lands beyond, traders flocked here by the hundreds to feast on Pompeii's delicacies, to relish its smells, to heed the babble of voices in a dozen different tongues. Romans were notoriously afraid of fires, so rather than risk the oven at home, they preferred eating out. There's a food stand on nearly every block. Cafe society has a long tradition. It's said that when the day has been good to you, order 2 coffees, one for you, one for humanity. Inevitably, humanity will join you before long. If archaeologists invest this empty city with life, they must also ponder its death. What happened to the ancients who endured that tragic day, August 24th, 79 AD? In these gladiator quarters were found the remains of more than 50 souls, including 2 wretched criminals chained to the stocks. But an even more poignant discovery was the bones of a bejeweled woman. Why did she rush here to face her death? For shelter? Or perhaps for the love of a gladiator? In all, more than 2,000 died. Their bodies were burned away in hot graves of ash. It's only when plaster is poured into mysterious recesses that the shape of their final agony is revealed. Only 7 years ago came an even more extraordinary find: the actual bones of 3 generations of a single family, strewn in the throes of death. Their bodies describe a map of their final moments. Grandparents, parents, and children are all poised in eternal flight. The father, his hand still drawn over his wife's mouth to filter ash from her breath. She is pregnant. The toddler trails behind. On the shores of the Bay of Naples, Pompeii's sister city, Herculaneum, also fell victim to the wrath of Vesuvius. But when Herculaneum was excavated, no bodies were found. It had been an ocean resort, so it was long assumed that the whole town escaped by sea. Then, a chance discovery by a team of ditch diggers led authorities to delve a little deeper. Where the beach was once alive with the sound of fishermen and children at play, a terrible drama unfolded. To the water they fled, one and all, though not to boats and freedom. Huddled in oceanside chambers, cowering against the onslaught, the people of Herculaneum were smothered beneath a wall of mud more than 60 feet deep. With the volcano behind them, with the raging sea before them, there was no escape. The villas here were even better preserved in their capsule of mud than those of Pompeii, a boon for scholars. Since he was 14, Carmine Montanino has been coming to Herculaneum in the quiet of noontime to contemplate a past he can only imagine.
E quando sono qui negli scavi io rivivo praticamente la vita di questi antichi romani.
When I am in this place, I relive the lives of these ancient Romans. The way they dressed, the way they moved, the way they ate, the way they worked. I relive the tragedy these people must have suffered when there was this incredible eruption which destroyed the city in a few hours. The city which had been so alive and active. The tragedy that befell these people was immense. It's not sad. The place is sad, but if one admires it, then it comes alive. Herculaneum will live on in eternity. Rome is dead forever, the Rome of that time. We have the Rome of today, but the Rome of 2,000 years ago is no more. Herculaneum, however, is intact. It will live on for thousands of years.
Today, the people of Herculaneum endure with the same danger that nearly erased their city from memory. Since that fateful day generations ago, Vesuvius has erupted no fewer than 80 times. And still, people linger unfazed beneath its specter. Nearby, the ground roils with anticipation. For centuries, the Italians have looked to this region as a gateway to the underworld. Here, Virgil's Aeneid and Dante's Inferno found their inspiration for hell. To this day, the volcano augurs a constant and grave reminder. When, no one knows. But one day, Vesuvius will awaken again. And yet, many others have found a piece of heaven here as well. As it will without fail, the pulse of life has returned to these ruins. They are now the backdrop for many a wedding. It was in Pompeii, after all, that the phrase was coined, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die." In southern Egypt, the blessings of a sacred river are invoked. The ritual is based on a belief old as the pharaohs, that powers dwell in the Nile. Today, they are summoned to calm a colicky baby. These waters will be his guardian, his mother's milk, his companion. But these women are not the daughters of the ancient pharaohs. They are the descendants of another people whose past is shrouded in mystery. Nubia is a nation that time has forgotten. The glory of the Egyptian Empire has outlasted the ages. Not so for Nubia. Only its spirit lives on, up and down the eternal Nile. Thousands of years ago, this slender stretch of river marked the one link between the Egyptians and Nubians, two powerful peoples as distinct as they were proud. Straddling their two spheres was the humble island of Sahel. Now, on its shores, a pair of friends are reunited. Mufid Mansour is a renowned Egyptologist. His dearest friend is Abdullah Burbis, a Nubian and a man of the Nile. Together, they will set sail on a voyage of friendship to rediscover what became of ancient Nubia. Sahel is one of the last living remnants of old Nubia in Egypt. Here, the evil eye still rules. People believe in spells, incantations, and charms. This is Abdullah's home. For now, their journey will just have to wait for the rituals of friendship. Sweet tea made from hibiscus petals.
It's a great happiness to see each other. It's a great happiness to be with each other. What's his is mine, and what's mine is his. I go to his home, I feel at home. It is this way. If you have great friendship, you share everything, except wives.
All his life, Abdullah has been a sailor for hire. For him, there is business to attend to on this trip. His old wooden boat, called a felucca, is on its last legs. A new one he has on order awaits him at journey's end. Mufid's destination is the past. He is seeking clues to the bond that united Nubia and Egypt, to the conflicts that drove them apart. Over the next 5 days will unfold a journey thousands of years in the making. From Sahel, they will sail northward, out of ancient Nubia, into the heart of Egypt at Thebes, the modern city of Luxor. All along, their way will be marked by traces of the ancients. To endure the ages, the pharaohs enshrined their spirit in stone. But in fact, the building blocks of their civilization were imported from another land. Nubia supplied the stone that carved an empire. The granite that graces nearly every temple and obelisk was quarried there. In the beginning, Egypt counted Nubia its rival and equal, and a relationship was born of simple commerce. But over time, the thirst for power consumed the pharaohs. They invaded, subjugating the Nubians, stealing their lands and colonizing their people. For centuries, Nubia endured under the shadow of Egypt. Nubia might have passed unheralded into the back pages of history. But in a golden age, it was reborn, revered among the noblest of civilizations. For there was a time when its pharaohs actually ruled all Egypt. Now, testament to Nubia's shining hour awaits downriver.
If you take such a trip, especially with someone like Abdullah, it's not only Egypt that you see, it is the contact with the Nubians through Abdullah. It introduces to you another culture, which is the Nubian culture that is quite different.
No place was the clash of nations more felt than here. Elephantine Island was the gateway to Nubia's quarries. Here, the pharaohs built an outpost of trade and manned it with powerful governors and troops, ever poised to hold Nubia in check. Egypt owed its strength to its fertile lands. So long as the Nile's yearly floods were good, a season of abundance followed. When the floods failed, there were drought and disaster. But the pharaohs were not ones to leave such matters to fate. They invented a device as ingenious as it was accurate. The Nileometer was designed to monitor the Nile's depth. In its markings, officials gauged the height of the floods. The higher the niche, the more wealth they would have in the season ahead. Elephantine was the nerve center for a bustling trade route. The bounty of all Africa flowed north, thanks to Nubian middlemen. Along with their perpetual shiploads of granite came exotic animals and incense, ebony and grain, leopard skins, ostrich feathers, and gold. At the crossroads of a continent, the governors of Elephantine lorded over the Nile. And here they were laid to rest. Gebet el Hawa, the dome of the wind. High atop the western bank, the governors were entombed, the eternal reward for a lifetime of service to the empire. The walls of tomb after tomb attest to both wealth and warfare. 2,000 years before Christ, Egypt's governors commanded a realm that stretched far south into Nubian soil. Their hieroglyphs brag of military campaigns staged against the same Nubians who were lining their coffers. In their bid for eternity, the pharaohs and their emissaries succeeded, for their achievements still resound through the ages. But behind the boasts that grace their crypts are the struggles of the people who ensured their glory. The farther north, the stronger the winds. They're said to be Isis, wailing over the death of her husband, Osiris. Abdullah's great sail is becoming unwieldy. And that's not the only thing wrong with this boat. His wooden felucca is obsolete nowadays.
There is more to sailing a felucca than pointing it in the right direction. Abdullah has learned about humility from the river. No one can say I am great, not on the Nile. Abdullah only knows his orientation on the water. North and south, he has the river. East and west, he has the sun. Taking him away from this, he's lost.
The sun, it was said, is a barge sailed by the god Ra. Each evening, as he descends into the west, he begins his night-long voyage through the underworld. For Mufid and Abdullah, their destination matters less than the time spent getting there together.
Abdullah is a classical Nubian. I mean, his manners, his attitude is very much Nubian. It's a noble characters, I'll say, Nubians. And they express themselves by singing. And his singing saying that this is the land of gold.
In the unwritten language of the Nubians, a song evokes a time 2,000 years past when they witnessed an age of glory. Abdullah is among the few true stewards of his culture left. A generation ago, the Nubians' homelands were flooded when the Aswan Dam was built. 60,000 moved to distant settlements, and with them went the traditions of a people. With every dawn, the god Ra returns. The underworld has been crossed, and once again, the sun sails across the sky. The dry dock where Abdullah's new felucca awaits is now 2 days away. The question is, will his old boat even make it? For now, at least, he'll need to pull ashore to pick up some new rigging. His timing couldn't be better. Every Tuesday, the village of Darao comes alive. The weekly market is in town. From miles around they come, to broker and barter livestock, produce, and gear. Thousands of years ago, the ancient markets would have seemed much like this. Darao belongs to a distant age. On the fringes of the bazaar is a commodity of timeless value. To sell their camels, the Bashareen nomads have traversed the Darbal Arba'in, the 40 days road, across 300 miles of open desert. The sands they traverse were once Nubian soil. Here, the stage was set for trade with the pharaohs and conquest at their hand. In fact, the Bashareen are descendants of the tribes of Nubia. These men of the desert have much in common with Abdullah, in blood ties as well as spirit. Today, the winds favor Abdullah. The miles downriver are rewarded. At a backwater boatyard, his new felucca awaits. The boat is built of steel, a little bigger, perhaps a little faster, but it bears the same design that has survived the test of time. Abdullah is a tough customer. The merchandise is not quite up to showroom standards. The felucca is 2,000 years in the making. Abdullah can wait one more day. Time enough for a last journey into Nubia's past. Near Luxor is a shrine with special meaning to Abdullah's people, for it recalls their historic day in the sun, when Nubia actually rose to eclipse the great empire. Mufid has brought his friend to Medinat Abu, a temple devoted not to Egypt's pharaohs, but to the pharaohs of Nubia. 500 years before Christ, Nubia's armies closed ranks to lay claim to the north. This was an age of splendor, when Egypt's borders spread as far as they ever would. For 5 generations, Nubian kings commanded Egypt, enlisting their daughters as ruling surrogates. Alongside Horus, the celebrated god of light, the priestesses of Nubia are among the ranks of the deified. Mufid has delivered his friend to the threshold of history.
بيستغرب الكتابات دي مثلا ايه ده الاس وبيقول مثلا اس
For Abdullah, the inner sanctum of the temple is a window into his past. Long after his ancestors relinquished their rule here, they carried the title of pharaoh back to their homeland. For 1,000 years, they continued their reign in Nubia, longer than any dynasty of Egypt. Homer said of this great civilization, "They are the remotest nation, the most just of men, the favorites of the gods. The lofty inhabitants of Olympus journey to them and take part in their feasts. Their sacrifices are the most agreeable of all that mortals can offer them." A new boat, a new claim to history. The Nile has blessed this journey for Egyptian and Nubian alike. The glory of an empire is owed to their bond and to the river that brought them together.